What's up, everybody? So today's topic is how goals actually work, why most people fail, why our goals suck, and what we can do differently to make sure that we're actually doing the right thing and achieving our goals. And then you're going to understand how to really walk away from this presentation and figure out what do. How do you actually set good goals? How do I not fail? Today's point is we're going to review some fake goals for Maria, for Devin, and then my own personal goals. I'm going to cover those in the video today and just make sure that we're explaining as I go what realistically this kind of whole process looks like. So Maria's goal is ultimately a weight loss goal. She wants to lose 25 pounds before her sister's wedding. Devin's goal is muscle gain. He's somebody who's never really worked out much before, feels like he's a skinny, fat person, and just generally wants to get in better shape and put on some real muscle in the next year. He wants some muscle. Also, check out the Scooby-Doo shirt. Oh, I'm rocking the Scooby-Doo shirt. You know I love Scooby-Doo. Scooby-Doo had great goals. Just eat food, be happy, and avoid monsters, which should be all of our goal at this point, honestly, and we have been struggling with that lately. So let's get into the goal setting. So the foundational claim for this whole thing is specific and hard beats vague and easy. You want a specific goal that is a little bit outside of the scope of what you think you can realistically do right now. You want to be able to reach for that goal. You have to be able to push yourself to achieve a goal. Otherwise, it's just a to-do list. There should be a challenge involved in that goal, but it can't be too hard, because if it's too hard, it'll become too frustrating. It might be outside of the scope of your resources, and that creates psychological, physical, emotional, and mental fatigue, which will make you give up on your goal. So in this case, we have goal specificity is a specific, clear target, something like run 3 miles under 27 minutes. Beat, run faster, get in shape, because it removes all the ambiguity and you have something really specific that you can point to, that you can measure, that you can figure out, am I moving toward this very specific? When your goal is super vague, I want to feel better. And that's like the number one thing I hear from people when I ask them, what's your goal look like? They'll say, I don't know. I just kind of want to look a little better. I want to feel a little better. And I'll have to really deep dive with them about exactly what does that mean to you? What does feeling better look like? What does feeling better feel like? And then eventually we might get to a place where they'll say something like, I want to wake up and not feel tired first thing in the morning. And it's like, okay, great. So that's a really specific goal. And we can look into sleep quality and nutrition and what does your steps look like and all that kind of stuff. Goal difficulty is very important. So performance rises in a straight line as the goal gets hard, up to the point where your ability or your resources run out. So hard and acceptable goal reliably beat the easy one. Remember that. That's an important point that we're going to cover throughout the topic here. Here's how goals actually work. There's 4 mechanisms and 4 conditions. So you have the mechanism and then the moderator. So the moderators have to be in place all the time. Those are the areas where you're most likely to struggle or most likely to fail. But the mechanisms need to be there to point you at the right goal. So the first thing is the direction of the goal. It focuses our attention and our effort on what's actually relevant for that goal. So for example, if your goal is a running goal and you're spending a lot of time in yoga, you might ask yourself, how exactly does this thing in yoga support the directional goal of getting to be a faster runner? It might, depending on what you're doing, but it might just be taking time, resources, energy away from the real goal. Effort. Harder goals mobilize more energy. People work harder when the bar is higher. Set a high bar for yourselves. Scare the shit out of yourself with this goal. Now, it can't be too terrifying. It can't be cut your run time in half, put on double the amount of weight to your bench press that you ever have before, right? It can't be lose 100 pounds in a week. That's completely unrealistic. But you want to make sure that effort and that the goal difficulty matches each other. Persistence is the real goal extends how long you keep trying, not just trying it once. So you might have a goal that you need to tackle in multiple different strengths. You might have a goal you need to go after a few different times in a few different ways, and that's totally okay, right? What we'll look at is how we set the incremental goals that get us closer and closer to that as we go on. And then the last thing is just that task strategy where you're pursuing the goal, you're pushing out old strategies and you're inventing new strategies, right? Because if you could have done this before, you would have. It's not a goal, right? It would have been something you achieved previously. So what exactly in your life is going to change? And how exactly do you plan on changing patterns, behaviors, habits, systems, tools? What's going to happen? What's going to change? What are you going to do specifically from a task perspective from a day-to-day perspective to move you toward that. Then the moderators for this, like I said, these things have to be in place for that to work, is commitment to the goal. So understanding why you're really doing this and committing to it, getting regular feedback and measurement, the complexity of the task, and then self-efficacy. Do you believe in yourself? Do you believe in your own ability to complete this goal? All of these things have to be in place before you can tackle the specific mechanisms of the goal. You have to be fully committed, so you have to have a good why. Why are you actually looking to do this? How exactly will you collect feedback? Are the various tasks complex enough, but not too complex that you don't even know how to start or what to do? And maybe that's where you find me, right? Maybe you're like, I have this goal to lose weight, or I have this goal to improve my performance, but I really don't know what to do. And this fun bald guy over here in the Scooby-Doo shirt seems to know what to do. So I'm going to come to him. He's going to help me with feedback. He's going to help me with making sure that the tasks are understood and they're appropriately complex. And then he's going to help me build my self-efficacy so I feel committed and ready to do this. Got a shell for myself, right? For anything new, brand new, a learning goal always beats a performance. So instead of the performance goal of I'm going to squat 225 by March, that puts a lot of pressure on the specific number. So instead, the learning goal might be, I'm going to come up with a way of cleaning up my squat. Once I get there, I know I'm ready to really tackle that 225. So let's think about how we actually apply these specific things we've talked about so far. We got Maria, we got Devin. So let's talk about these specific. So her goal was to lose 25 pounds in about 24 weeks. What's in play here is there's untested self-efficacy. This is her first real attempt to ever lose this kind of weight. So early wins for commitment matter to her. Maybe she focuses on some learning goals about how do I even track food to begin, right? What does food tracking look like? How do I acclimate to these new apps that I might use? With Devin, that add 15 pounds of scale weight and 2 plates on his bench and all that kind of stuff, he's a true beginner. So in his first 8 to 12 weeks, he's better served by learning a lot about technique, learning a lot about how to move his body, how to push weights, and then again, how to eat an appropriate amount of protein, how to get the appropriate amount of calories to change that body composition, and how to set up a structure that's actually going to work for him that's not just going to put on a ton of body fat. Now let's get into how we set the goal specific. And the idea of SMART goals, a lot of people have heard of SMART goals. I'm going to cover it in my particular way that I like to think about SMART goals. So SMART is an acronym, S, M. So the S is specific, the M is measurable. State exactly what you're going to do. For whom will you do it? Where will you do it? How will you do it? What is the real target? Not a direction, not get better, not improve this, the number. Or whatever the specific thing you can measure is. And then that's where measurability comes with it. When you attach a number to something, you have to have real ways of measuring that. You have to be able to say, here's exactly the key performance indicator, the KPI is what we talked about in the corporate world. But just what is the data? How am I going to track the data? How am I going to measure the data? How am I going to keep it in line? And how will it tell me that I'm moving toward this specific goal? So get fit, get healthy are terrible goals. And that's the problem is we start there and then we don't really know what that means. And then we just start to do a variety of different stuff and activities that might push us in the, I think I'm getting healthier direction, but how do you even measure that? How do you even measure what health is? So a few things you can think about specifically for health. Your waist circumference is a huge one that will tell you a lot about your health status. Your cholesterol numbers, your blood pressure numbers, your fasting blood glucose, your HbA1c. There's a lot of blood markers you could utilize. You could talk about how you feel when you wake up in the morning. You can talk about sleep quality. These are all things that you could set as a very specific goal or as very specific things that you measure as the general goal. So perhaps your goal is, I want to create a general sense of improved health. And here are the 4 markers that health mean to me, right? And then I'm going to measure each one of those 4 markers all along the way. And as long as each one is improving, I know that I'm moving toward my goal. That's another good way to think of it. The specific goal could be, as I said, to squat 225. It could be to cut 2 minutes off your half marathon time. It could be to just complete a marathon for the first time, right? Whatever it is, though, it needs to be very specific so that you know how to measure. Then we have the ART of the SMART goal. So that's the ART, achievable, relevant, and time-bound. Achievable is the reality of the thing. Can you really even do this? And not just you, because we have a tendency to be like, I can do anything. So it needs to be hard, genuinely difficult, as I mentioned before, but within reach. You need to be able to see it. It needs to be close enough that you can grab it, but not so close that it's easy to achieve, because that's not really a goal. That's a to-do list, like I said. But that comes in line with the idea that you have actual constraints, right? We're real humans with constraints of our resources. So you need to think about, do I have enough time for this goal? Do I have enough money for this goal? Do I have enough recovery for these physical goals? Do I have the knowledge? Do I know where to go to figure out what to do? These are all things you want to ask yourself as part of testing this goal and as part of setting it to make sure that it's actually achievable for you. Relevant is your why. It connects to something that you actually value. It's not something that somebody else values. It's not something that somebody puts on you. It needs to be a self-motivating thing. And we'll talk a little bit about self-motivation in just a second. But the relevancy here is just sit down and think to yourself, why is this actually important? Where does the should come from? So you're thinking to yourself, this goal is important to me because health is important to me because I should really get right there. There's a should, right? Whose should is that your should? Or did that should come from the outside world? Are we just shoulding all over ourselves? So thinking about the should, the why, the who, the values, where do you feel it in your chest? And so some of the best goals are when you see things like, I really just want to be able to play with my kid. And I can't run around without getting hurt or without feeling sick or without getting out of breath. And it makes me feel like a bad parent. That's a great why for your goal. If it's that I've never been able to, for my particular goals, a lot of it is that growing up extremely overweight my whole life, I never thought I could look and feel and perform in these ways. So it's really fun for me to keep testing myself in these different ways, but it feels like it undoes a lot of the psychological issues that I ran into over time as I prove to myself that I can do these. Just to be real vulnerable on YouTube, as I prove to myself that I am actually worthy, that I am just like everybody else, that there was never anything inherently wrong with me. I just was in a bad situation, got told a lot of bad stuff, and believed those things about me. And now that I'm an adult and I'm moving past that and I'm improving my relationship with myself and improving my relationship with my body and my body dysmorphia, it is really fun and interesting to me to test the various boundaries of my physical capacity. So whether that's strength, whether that's running, whether that's cardio, whether that's weight loss, how I look, all those kinds of things, that's a really important why for me, because it is incredibly fulfilling to prove those people, perhaps, but also prove myself wrong. That version of myself from the past that just thought I was worthless and couldn't do anything, which was there for most of my life. And then time-bound is a real deadline that creates urgency. So that's like signing up for a race, signing up for a powerlifting meet. It's having the bodybuilding show. It's having the wedding that you need to go to. Whatever it is, but having something that is really time-bound helps you with your checkpoints. It helps you with setting a very specific and realistic expectation. So here we see some applications. The weight loss goal from Maria: lose 25 pounds by October 12th. That's the day of her sister's wedding. Via a 500 calorie daily deficit, tracked weekly, do a check-in every 2 weeks. So she's going to be doing a daily weight on the scale. Every week, she's going to track her average weight to make sure that it's trending in the right direction, which is down. Every time she stalls for more than 2 weeks, she's going to cut some additional calories or think about ways that she can move. She's going to do check-in photos every 2 weeks. This way, she's getting a good sense of her body composition, because the scale can move in different ways and it can lie to you, but the body composition changes don't lie for the most part. So she's going to check it and track it in a few different ways, and she's got something very specific. For Devin, that goal would look like gain 15 pounds and add 40 pounds to the bench in about 12 months. He's going to create a training program where he's training 4 times a week. He's going to track the scale. He's going to track his lifts after every block that he does to move in that direction. And he knows that he's got about a year to gain 15 pounds, and 15 pounds of muscle in a year is a little over a pound a month, which is actually completely reasonable for a new person who is just getting into lifting for the first time. For my SMART goal, knowing that I'm shooting toward getting to a stage weight of 212, what that's going to look like is, first and foremost, I need to reverse myself out of this very lean phase. The faster I can do that in a healthy way, the better it's going to be for my recovery and the better it's going to be for my off-season muscle building, which is where the focus of this off-season is. So my main goal is just to have a very successful off-season. And then off season for me right now is going to look like about 16 weeks. And my goal is to get into the 16 weeks and spend as much time at about 215 pounds during that 16 weeks as I can in a healthy way. Build as much strength and muscle as I can during that period of time, and then assess my physique, hold at 215 pounds, and then potentially decide at that point, do I want to do a little bit of a mini cut, pull back to 210 so that I can grow more? Or is 215 still a very lean body weight for me where I'm still making a lot of progress and I could push from 215 to 220? But I'm not going to make that call yet. I'm going to wait, get to 215, spend time there, and then reassess and make a new goal for myself. So even though I've got this big initial goal that's overseeing everything of getting to that stage weight, this short-term goal for me is just as important. And I know that it gets me, but I need to focus on the quality of this goal first. So that's what I'll do. This information comes from self-determination theory, but it's why the same goal can energize one person and drain somebody else. And it comes down to three basic pieces of psychology, which is that whenever we're thinking about goals and thinking about action and motivation in general, the more autonomy we have, which is feeling like we have real choice and ownership over what we're doing, the more competent we feel. So we're capable, we're effective, we know what to do, I know how to show up and complete this, and I feel good. And then the more related I feel. So I feel connected to and supported by other people doing the same thing. It's why we join teams and communities. It feels really good. When we have all three of these things in place, it is my choice, I am capable, and I feel connected to somebody else, I'm much more likely to feel intrinsically motivated by that. So now if I've got my why on top of it, right? I have a really good why. I've designed a really good goal. I have autonomy over those choices that I made to create that goal. I feel ready and competent to tackle that goal. And I see where my support system, whether that's my family and friends, whether that's my big bald coach, or whether that's other people in the community who are doing the same thing, other bodybuilders, other runners, other people doing body transformations, whatever it is. But when I feel connected to that group, I feel ready to tackle this goal and I feel truly intrinsically motivated to accomplish it. Goals are not perfect though. We're going to hit roadblocks, barriers, challenges. We're going to have all kinds of problems. And the more to the right we are in this chart, the more likely we are to be able to push past some of those things in ways where we're being creative, in ways where we're trying to really get past our barriers if those goals are fully self-endorsed and full of intrinsic motivation. So you see here that a motivational goal is one that is often put on you. So this is like your boss tells you have to do this, right? Or my doctor told me I have to lose weight. And like that. So that's your doctor's goal, not your goal. Then as you move up this chart, this is who I am now. I just enjoy doing this. I genuinely value these activities. The more you can get there and feel about your goals and feel about those things, the more autonomy you have, the more durable it's going to be for you to achieve this thing as you struggle, because we all struggle. If you set a good goal, if the goal makes sense and it covers everything we've talked about so far, you will struggle. There will be challenges, right? That's the whole point of the goal. Like I said, it needs to be hard enough to stretch you. And in the stretching process, that's where we run into these kinds of barriers. And the more you feel good about your goal and all of these kinds of things, the more likely you are to push past those barriers and come up with creative strategies, solutions, or just frankly show some grit and not give up. So here's how this applies to each one of our case studies here. So with Maria, her starting point, it is an introjected goal. It's driven mostly by external factors, by the wedding deadline, by family health fears. So one way that we can help her with this is by giving her as much autonomy as possible, by letting her choose the workouts and the food she likes within the calorie target so the plan still feels like it's her. The other thing that I might do if I was working with Maria is spend a lot of time talking to her about why some of these things ultimately truly feel important to her, so that it feels a little bit less like her family might be putting this on her, like the pressure and stress of losing weight for this event. For Devin, it's an external goal where it's mostly self-conscious. He's self-conscious about the way he looks. He doesn't feel good in his body because of the way he looks. So we're going to shift toward early competence, get him some win. Visible strength jumps in that first month, making sure he sees real progress showing up somewhere so that he sees that he is very capable of these things. From that capability, it'll improve his adherence to the goal and shift that external factor from, I need to do this because I'm embarrassed for how I look, to I need to do this because I'm good and I'm showing real improvement, and it's fun for me. And I want to keep doing that fun thing. For me right now with my goal, the biggest issue that gets in my way and that I know will continue to get in my way is the external factor and the external judgment of exactly the performance that I'm doing. Because at any given time, I'm slower or I'm faster. I'm stronger or I'm weaker. I'm bigger or I'm small. And it's really hard for me mentally to give up any quality that I've achieved. So once I had the fitness to run a certain 5K, I never wanted to be any slower. Once I had the fitness to do the 204 half marathon, I never wanted to be any slower. I never wanted to run less. Once I hit a certain body weight, I never want to gain a pound again because it feels great. It feels, oh, wow, I'm thin now, or I'm lean now. I want to stay there. But also, how do I put on a bunch of muscle and get jacked with just that body weight? Oh, already there's problems that you can see, right? But also like in the gym, how much weight is on the bar? And it's an ego thing. And it's a problem for me occasionally to give up weight. So I'll give you a really specific and good example. I was extraordinarily stubborn for far too long and ended up really badly hurting myself. I've been dealing with herniated disc, sciatica, sciatic nerve pain, and really substantial numbness through my legs and feet for the last couple of years, for all intents and purposes, because I refused to give up my deadlift, man. I was still deadlifting extremely heavy twice a week, every week, on top of running 50 miles a week, on top of squatting twice a week, every week, on top of just all these things, just refusing to give up any one quality because I was so scared to give up anything that I had already achieved. And that was a real problem for me. It still probably is, honestly. It still probably will be in the future for me. But I've been forced to give up some of those things because of injuries, because of illnesses, because of weakness. And as I've been forced to give them up, I've realized that, oh, they really don't go that far, do they? I really don't lose that much strength. As an example, I gave up my best deadlift ever was 650 pounds. And I hadn't deadlifted in 6 or 7 months and just decided one day to just test it and see what it felt. And I was still able to deadlift like 550 pounds with not much issue. Now those are my personal numbers. Some of you hear that and go like, oh my God. And some of you hear that and go like, that's nothing, bro. Either way, it doesn't matter. Those are my numbers and that's fine. But for me to be within 100 pounds of my all-time best after not deadlifting or touching the barbell at all for 6 months, just really goes to show, oh, wow, I was really being stubborn for no reason. You really don't lose that much as long as you're still working out, moving, getting other qualities pushed and achieved. You're always within a couple of good blocks away from keeping some of those qualities. And that's an important lesson for me, but that's the shift that I need to make sure that I'm making with these goals. The biggest thing that we can do though, when we start these goals is we have to make sure that we're truly ready to tackle them. We have to make sure that our constraints are not getting in the way, that we have all of the appropriate resources to truly tackle every piece of that goal. Recovery capacity, money, access to the equipment and the coaching and the food and whatever else you're going to need, injury and health status, other competing demand. These are all real things that we have to contend with and consider when we're setting our goals, when we're thinking about the mini goals, and when we're thinking about the smart areas and our own even intrinsic motivation, how all of these things are going to weigh against that or for that. But then beyond those realistic constraints that you can measure are the ones that are a little bit difficult to measure. So that's perfectionism or all or nothing think. If I can't do it perfectly, there's no point in doing it at all. That turns one missed day or one bad day into just quitting on the whole thing. Moving your goalposts. This is a big one for me. Every time progress shows, the bar gets harder instead of the goal being declared met. So you never really succeed. You never really move positively in the direction of the ultimate goal because the goal keeps changing. So that's where writing the thing down, having specific dates, having specific frameworks in mind can go a really long way toward success there. Fear of failure. So you hide your effort as a failed attempt so no one has to witness. It also removes relatedness. It removes social support. It removes the vulnerability that can be there. It removes the connectedness that you ultimately can feel with other people. And then finally, the low self-efficacy is not believing the goal is possible, which undercuts your commitment before you even start. So making sure that you are tackling what is getting in the way of that self-efficacy before you begin. So let's talk about the realities as we apply them to the specific cases that we are looking at. With Maria, her real constraints are she's got 2 kids, a full-time job. It leaves a narrow, unpredictable training and meal prep window. She's not really sure exactly when she's going to get her training done. She's not really sure how or when she's going to be able to. So her likelihood for failure is huge because she's going to end up missing some workouts and then she's going to feel like, what's the point? I already missed this week. I only have a short period of time before the wedding. There's no point in moving forward. It turns one bad week into I just completely gave up. For Devin, the real constraint is he's got no training history. So he doesn't know that he can do this. And he doesn't know the strategy that he's choosing if it's going to be good. That's where he's most likely going to end up with quiet quitting, skipping sessions, spinning his wheels, not really moving in the right direction because he's not really sure what to do. And so for him, one of the easiest things to do would be to find a coach. Or at least find some really good programs or apps or something that can move him in the right direction. Find some other people in his community. And that's where replacing the lack of self-efficacy with the relatedness and the connectedness could really help because it'll give him both. For me, my real constraint is stress management. So not am I hitting my meals, not am I hitting my workouts, because I've got that so dialed in and I've got all kinds of systems in place there. But at the end of the day, can I be done working by 7 o'clock so that I can actually relax, actually recover, actually get quality sleep? That's going to be the thing that gets in my way first and foremost every time. Is my recovery capacity, as I'm a little bit older now, I'm in my 40s, is not what it was when I was in my 20s. And that's fine. But I need to be realistic about the fact that I can't just grind for 12 hours a day, every single day of the week, every single day of the year, and expect to be able to recover from the kinds of training it's going to take for me to realistically put on that kind of weight, and especially in a healthy way. Putting it all together, here's what it looks like. Define the goal, measure the goal, check your readiness, anchor yourself to your identity, build in the other pieces, the choice, the connectedness, the relatedness, and then set some stop conditions, some explicit adjustments, some thresholds decided before it gets hard, decided before you move the goalposts. What does success look like? What does failure look like? What could potentially get in your way? And how do you think about those things? This is the TLDR for the whole thing. So here's the ultimate takeaway. Specific and difficult beats vague and easy. SMART isn't just a checklist, it's a delivery mechanism. It's the most important thing to figure out how we're going to achieve these goals. Willpower matters less than the reason behind the goal. Have a good reason why, have autonomy, competence, and relatedness. That's going to predict whether you're going to be sticking with it in 6 months or whether you already gave up. Every framework has to assume that the goal fits your real life. You need to think about your real constraints first and foremost all the time. Time, recovery, money, health, psychology, all of those things. And then using that framework no matter what the goal is, because the framework is a good framework for anything and everything. Whether that's work goals, personal goals, health goals, you can use this framework across your life. Hopefully you thought about that as we went along and you had some goals in your own mind and you thought about how you could apply these principles. So that's what's up with goals. Hopefully this was useful and helpful for you. Comment below, what are your goals? What did you take away from this presentation that was the most interesting or the most useful toward your goals and toward thinking about how you're going to achieve? I want to hear from you. Put some scary goals down there, put some big goals down there, put any questions you have down there about goals or goal setting. I'm happy to answer all of them, and I'm happy to support you even from afar as you try to complete these goals yourself. So that's what's up with goals, YouTube, and that's what's up with me. What's up with you?